Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So my interview today is with Avi Lewis, and I'm absolutely thrilled that I was able to connect with Avi. He's in New York, I think, promoting his new film called This Changes Everything. It premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, and I wasn't able to connect with him there, but I got him online and on the phone, and we it's a short interview, but you know what? It's compelling. It's interesting. It's fun. You got to stay tuned on this, and you're going to find out a little bit more about Avi's new film and about Naomi Klein's book, This Changes Everything. But what I think you're going to be really interested to see is that this is a film about something other than the environment. On the surface, this film is about what's happening and kind of how we're going to hell in a handbasket pretty quickly, I suppose. But that's the surface text. Go a little bit deeper, peel back a couple layers, and what you're going to find is a shift. You're going to find questions being raised about things that have been haunting us for years on a philosophical level, on a community level. This film's about collaboration. This film is about relationships. This film is about how we know and what we know. And years ago, American Beauty, what was the film about? The tagline was "Look Closer." That's exactly what Avi is asking us to do in this film. It's compelling, it's interesting, it's a great interview. Wait for some of the images too. So buckle up, enjoy the interview, and we'll wait for your measured response. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We're joined by Avi Lewis. He's the director of This Changes Everything. It made its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival, 40th anniversary of the film festival. Avi, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, it's a great pleasure to be here.
So we've got a limited amount of time, and I have no idea where to start, Avi.
Well, what do you do with a project called This Changes Everything?
Oh, for the love! Could you have gone with a loftier title, maybe?
Well, it's important to remember for the book and the film that, Naomi and I don't believe that books and films change the world. Movements do. People do. And that This Changes Everything is not the book or the film. Climate change changes everything. And either, it's going to change our world, whether we do anything about it or not. We are facing a future of radical change. That change can be apocalyptic if we stay on the path we're on. And that change could be truly inspiring and hopeful if we somehow rouse our societies out of their slumber and actually use addressing the climate crisis as an opportunity to get at its root cause, a violently unequal economic system that since 2008 everyone in the world knows is in desperate need of some serious renovation, if not revolution.
I love the way Naomi near the end of the film talks about, the idea of a pressure from below. It's so great, just the oil below the ground. The metaphor is brilliant, and this idea of
the bubbling up is, this is what we, when you think about making a book, a film, a political manifesto, whatever is your venue, and we've chosen all of those things as a sort of united front, as a way of getting this more radical frame into the wider culture. You have to think about, how change happens. What it's become fashionable to call it your theory of change. As a creative worker, as a communications worker, as a storyteller, how do we actually think it works? What role, for my part, does a documentary play in social change? And that pushes you into the question of how change happens. And what we've seen is this wholesale ideological capture of the political class around the world, where the fundamental tenets of neoliberalism, and it's a relief to be on a Rabble podcast where I can use that term and
that's right.
talking about, where neoliberalism is just such an iron grip on the political class globally, that, you know, politicians just aren't going to save us. And you can see, I mean, you see the incredible appetite for Bernie Sanders, for the Pope's visit to the United States, because these people are talking about inequality and climate change and linking the two. But the political class is just not going to do it without pressure. And so what we've seen in places like Germany, and this is maybe, you know, it's only a minute in the film, but it's one of the most important minutes for me, is that Germany's engaged in this massive energy transition, which has been going on for a decade and a half. And the energy and the propulsion for it really came from the anti-nuclear movement that turned the tide against nuclear energy. A big watershed was after Fukushima. And the energy transition there was already in motion, but that really gave it a huge push. And after, you know, turning the tide on nuclear energy, that movement morphed into a pro-renewable energy movement. And now, you know, the next phase of it is, while an incredible transition has gone on in the energy system with a huge growth of renewables, they haven't retired coal in a significant way in Germany. And so you have some of the dirtiest lignite coal mines and power stations in Europe that are now the subject of a huge activist campaign.
So, Avi,
so the German politicians are feeling the pressure from the movement, and not particularly progressive governments in Germany have been doing incredibly progressive things, creating 400,000 jobs and 900 energy cooperatives with community control over energy and de-privatization of electricity utilities and 30% renewables in their electricity mix because of pressure from people. And so films can give people ways to come together, to share stories and to change the narrative, and to be a meeting place and a conversation starter, and to be a tool for organizing in movement. And that's where I feel like the film could serve a useful role.
Well, I think it's going to do that. At least it seems to me. The question I have is: Do you believe in little things? Do you believe in incremental change, or are you hopeful? Are you it comes up in the film and a couple of the people that you interview or who are speaking throughout about this idea of we need a macro change. We need to turn this upside down. But I get the sense of Sisyphus rolling the stone up the hill.
This is a very deep question, David. I grew up in a family, an NDP family, a political family, and I learned my family's theory of change.
Right, nice. I like it. Yeah, it's good.
Which is that to change a society, you have to change the laws, and the laws are written by politicians. And the way that you get a more just society is you engage in the political process. There's a party that is the avenue for our values, and we work for the party, and we elect members at the provincial and national level, and we make better legislation, and incrementally, little by little, we improve the lives of the majority of people, of working people, and that's how change happens. And I think, as a teenager and an adolescent, as a young adult, I was always to the left of that tradition, and I felt unsatisfied by its ambition, the way kids want revolution. As an adult, confronting the enormity of the climate crisis, I just actually think we don't have time for that.
Right.
I mean, I never really invested in it personally because I went into my mother's family business of journalism rather than my dad's of politics.
Right.
But I just think that incrementalism is really being challenged by the severity of the climate crisis and how fast we need to make a U-turn. So I think all change does happen incrementally until there's a big leap.
Right.
Until there's an Arab Spring, until there's an Occupy, until the Berlin Wall comes down, until Alberta elects an NDP government after 34 years of Tories, and then after these huge lurches, you kind of go back to incrementalism. But I think the leap that Rabble has covered in such a beautiful way, and that has caught the imagination of so many people in our country, the idea that it's time for a leap and we don't have time for little steps seems to suit the tenor of this moment.
Do you know what I love about your film is that it's really not about the environment at all. I mean,
Thank you.
it's this. It's like if we peel back a layer or two. This is about story. It's about collaboration. It's about how we know. It's about build. It's about. Can I use the word epistemology on this interview, Avi? It's about.
I am so great. As someone who studied Husserl, I'm quite delighted.
Oh, that's awesome.
Epistemology. But let's leave.
Okay, I'm going to say that we will alienate.
It's phenomenology. The audience.
Yeah, we're going to alienate every member of our listening audience if we go into a discussion about French and German existentialism. I'm pretty sure of that.
I don't think I can hold my own at this point. Yes, it is about ways of knowing. It's absolutely about ways of knowing. It's about interconnectedness. It's about people who. It's about communities coming together across difference.
Yeah.
This was something that just blew my mind as I went to India, to southern Andhra Pradesh, where there was a famous struggle that had won an incredible victory against the coal-fired power plant in Peck. And what I discovered when I went there and talked to people, like, how did you do it? What's the secret sauce? Like, what happened here? Is that the movement was led by professionals, doctors and lawyers and professors who live in the town.
Yeah, these are serious people.
The wetland that they were saving provides the livelihood for fishers and farmers and some of the poorest people in society who are doing subsistence fishing and farming. And it was this unprecedented coalition that built across class and ethnic and caste division, and against across gender divisions, because of course, as everywhere, we see women at the absolute leadership in all of these social movements, and providing the vision and the strength and the power. And so this movement was really about this group of people in the town seeing people, the other, seeing those people that were invisible before, and understanding that they had a common interest, that this wetland supported all the life in the area, all the diversity of life. And so that really is the fundamental challenge, and that's why the idea from Naomi's book that we chose as the through line for the film is changing the story of our 400-year-old fantasy that humans were put here on Earth to dominate and use nature for our own ends, and finding a way to older, ancient, and also futuristic narratives of regeneration, of reciprocity.
Well, yeah, and
being connected and working together.
I mean, we are so steeped in the Enlightenment still, right? We are so still children of the Enlightenment, and I love what you and Naomi have said with this. Where's the quote here? Stories shape people, what they see and what they can't see, close quote. I mean, isn't that what this is about, Avi, to some degree? And this is why I brought up the whole notion of knowledge, and I know you are with the film, but it's about those layers, it's about those filters, right? That we...
There's no question. I mean, look at the hole in the center of our country, tar sand. I've had a Google alert on Fort McMurray and oil sands for almost 15 years.
Right.
But I think for a lot of people, thanks to a lot of our comrades in the environmental movement in the United States who really put the pipelines on trial. Finally, the tar sand, and thanks, unfortunately, to the Harper government who restructured our entire economic and environmental system for the service of that one resource. Finally, the tar sands are at the center of the Canadian political conversation. But for such a long time, we couldn't even see this greatest ongoing crime against nature that's taking place right smack in the middle of our country, the largest industrial project on Earth. So it's very much about seeing what's already there. And we lived in Argentina for a year in the early 2000s and made a film called The Take.
Which is great, by the way, and for anyone who hasn't seen it, it really is good, Avi.
We learned a phrase that people said in Argentina about the dictatorship. What was, and it goes, so it doesn't translate perfectly, but it goes something like, nobody could deny what nobody knew.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, that everybody knew what was happening, and everybody was in denial. There were torture centers on the corner,
right,
and yet everybody went shopping and pretended not to hear the screams. And it's breaking down that wall between what we know is happening and what we can see and what we can engage with.
Hey,
I think is the key to unlock
Avi,
a
do you
wave
think
of activism, which is just waiting to happen.
Yeah, well, and there, you talked to somebody after Hurricane Sandy, and they said something about, a crisis like this cries out for collective action. Do you think that too many of us are just lazy on some level, that we've just checked out and said, you know what, the market will sort it out, others will sort it out, it's way too big for me. What can, the notion of what can one person do?
Yeah. Well, what can one person do is the question that we all face in isolation, and we are subject to an indescribable number of messages and support, cultural support for that isolation. Our entire consumption-based global economy tells us that we will find our happiness through retail, and that the thing to do at night is to chat with people virtually about what we're watching on our screen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't blame people for that. I think there's a system in place, an immensely profitable system, that reinforces that vision of isolation and of consumerism from every conceivable angle and blasts it at us from all of our screens all day, every day. I think people care. I think most of us care. Maybe we care too much.
Right.
And we know what we're doing to our home, to our common home. And in a way we can't bear to look because we're ashamed. There's a lot of mourning to be done. There's a lot of sadness to go through about what we've done to this beautiful planet. And yet at the same time, I don't think indifference is the problem. I think, it may be that people care too much rather than not enough. And it's that denial, which is a very important human mechanism for dealing with trauma, when we dwell in it too long, becomes a negative force. And I think that's sort of where we're at. And what's exciting about this time that we're living in is that a lot of people simultaneously are coming out of denial. We see the explosion of the climate justice movement. There were 500,000 people on the streets of New York City exactly a year ago, and there's going to be more than that in Paris for the climate talks at the end of the year. The divestment movement has exploded around the world in the last 3 years, and university students and municipalities and other institutions, faith-based institutions, are divesting from fossil fuels. Incredible victories have happened there. And none of these pipelines that we've been fighting have been built. And there are no coal export terminals that have even broken ground on the west coast of Canada. And like all the new coal mines proposed in the Powder River Basin, none of them has broken ground. And so, I don't believe in sort of overinflating movement victories, but we have an awful lot to celebrate, and a lot of people are coming out of denial because there are real victories being won. We're not winning. Don't for a second pretend that we're winning. We are hurtling in the wrong direction as a global economy and as a global society, but it's not like nothing is happening.
Right.
We're seeing people come out of that denial and emerge blinking into the light and finding that there's a lot of other people there waiting for them. And I think that's, I hope that some of that comes through in the film, because it's certainly from spending 5 years of my life going around the world talking to people who are engaged in community struggle. That's what I took away.
Well, I think for me, it's about the dialogue. It's about the conversation. It's about, it's about the question. The Neo in the Matrix, Trinity says it's the question that drives us, right? And so,
yeah.
If we continue to peel back those layers and keep this in the forefront, and this is what films like yours are doing, and books and so on, and I guess that's where I do believe in little things. Yeah, you got to have the macro, and it's a build. But if I'm going to have a conversation tonight around the dinner table about your film, then I think that's gonna create I hope a wider embrace of one kind or another. I have to say, Avi, I love one of your establishing shots, the roller coaster in the water with the American flag. I mean, it's awesome. That should be like the poster.
That one. I think this people know that the roller coaster that we're on is getting flooded. Certainly Canadians know about the oil roller coaster, and Calgary's been underwater, 2 of the last 4 summers.
Well, and I went to Playground. I went to Kids. I actually saw the hope in that as well. and I look at my kids and how they've been raised in an environmental world that I wasn't, and how, you know what, there are good reasons to be hopeful.
I totally agree with you on the little things. I think, the key to unlock here is how do people who are working, who have to feed their kids, who are working multiple low-wage jobs, it's the majority of people scrambling to just fulfill their familial responsibilities, and how do those people engage and become engaged citizens and become activists? Because we really do need massive social change, and it's going to be driven by massive participation across society. So what is that thing that clicks for somebody? What is that thing that can turn on the light and make a life of engagement seem really appealing? And that's where I think the little things can be incredibly important. It could be a book or a film. It could be a conversation with a colleague at work. It could be, a chat with your parents and siblings at dinner. It could be any number of things that leap out of the clutter at you. And I think that is the power of little things, the power of that moment of transformation that can strike, like all human moments, at any time and in the most mundane of circumstances. And I think that's really quite beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I think there's, this idea of validating the other has become really kind of, as crazy as it might sound, on a certain level, sort of central for the work that I do. So I work in development and so on, and we seem to, and I. Maybe one of the people in the film, they kind of blame capitalism. It's a pretty interesting little interview, and she doesn't want to say it, she doesn't want to come out of it, but there is a demonization of the other, and I don't like. You listen to some of these these advocates for the free market, and you go, really? Did you just say that? And I know they're saying that they're looking at others on the other side of the fence, and they're going, wow, those guys are just all hopeful, idealistic nut jobs, right? And what for me, I mean, how do we get those guys in the same room? How do we get everybody in the same room?
Well, I think for the real ideologues, I don't, for myself, that's not the focus of my work. I think those people are deeply invested in their narratives, and I also think they're a minority and a fringe. I think they're a vanguard that thrives.
It's a great line, vanguard that thrives.
They're very profitable ideas that they espouse, but they're very crazy, which is why we kept in the clip of Mark Morano, climate deniers in the United States.
He's unbelievable.
You want more trees, use more wood, because using more wood sends a signal to the market that trees have value. If you want more elephants, market their ivory. That is a patently insane statement, which perfectly articulates the pure free market logic of self-interest driving the greater good, and the invisible hand of the market taking care of everything. So it sounds insane when you say it's pure and straight like that, but actually it's the dominant idea of our time, and it's the key to understanding our whole system. I don't need to convert Mark Morano. What we need to do is engage the 99% of us who don't agree with crazy statements like that. And then those people will be lonelier, and they'll have less power.
Can I ask you one last question?
You have to forgive me, because I've got to go and talk to someone else. This is a conversation I could have all day.
That's awesome. Well, maybe we can do a part 2 down the road.
I would love that.
Yeah. Well, listen, Avi, thank you so much for joining us today. This changes everything. Is it going to wide release?
It premieres in theaters across the country on October 9th.
October 9th. Excellent. Well, thank you.
And follow. And community screenings can be booked by early November.
Excellent.
So the film is going to be in theaters, and if you miss it there, you can book your own screening shortly after.
Very good. Well, listen, congratulations, and thank you so much for your generosity today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, David. It's been a pleasure.
All righty. Bye-bye.